4 standard students getting somewhere between 10 and 30 marks maybe, and all of the 10 standard students getting between say 50 and 70 marks. So you'll have 2 humps. That's a bimodal distribution. When you have 2 completely different groups with completely different capabilities, you get this kind of a pattern. And mathematics and computer science are 2 subjects where across a lot of countries, across a lot of universities, people have found mild patterns of bimodality. That is, there are some people who actually do get mathematics and some people who do not. And this could well be caused by those students who, because they get mathematics, could probably have scored 110 if the paper allowed for it, and are just sort of crunching at 100. Now, but these are relatively smooth distributions. The Tamil Nadu education system seems to have reasonably consistent marking scheme. If I were to take this to ICSE, however, this year, I get a very, very different kind of pattern. Nobody in the entire country scored 50 marks. Nobody in the entire country scored 51. Nobody scored 53. Nobody scored 50, blah, 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 whole variety of marks, 93, 91. It's like out of the 100 possible marks that one could award, the ICSE has decided that only 33 of these shall be awarded, and nobody scores any of the other marks. No one has a clue why this has happened. And this was reported in a variety of media. India Today reported it, Times of India reported it, and the chairman of ICSE was hounded for a good week before he comes out with a very mild sounding explanation. His statement is, we use a policy of normalization that leads to this kind of a distribution. Now, what that policy is, how it leads to this kind of a distribution, complete mystery. And people, the ICSE teachers say, no, we don't round off any marks, we just give the marks as they are. So somewhere along the line, some weird thing is happening. This year at CBSE, on the other hand, a different kind of mystery has emerged. You see the largest spike is not at 35, at the pass mark, it is in fact at 95 on the right extreme. So which means that, well, either students are getting pushed up, which you would think makes sense, but in fact what's happening is that there are very few students scoring between 96 and 100. So students are getting pushed down. This year, for some reason, CBSE has decided that all of the students who score 96 to 100, their marks shall be evaluated and their marks shall be brought down, perhaps to prevent any accusations of normalization and moderation that happened last year. Simple averages, no more than that, and yet behind these lie a story. In fact, there's a more powerful story. Since we had every single student's marks, we had in Tamil Nadu, for example, we had 2 crore students worth of data, every student from 2005 to 2013. And we had their names, we had their father's name, mother's name, date of birth, address, community, gender, you name it. We had enough information to compute their horoscope. So we decided to go ahead. What is the impact of astrology on marks? What is the impact of numerology on marks? Can we actually see if there is an impact? So first we started off with numerology. Does the first letter of the name make a difference, for example? How many people think that the first letter of the name makes a difference to the marks? Okay, 2, 3. Okay, a relatively small fraction. Well, just to check, how many people think that the first letter of the name does not make a difference? Okay, that's reasonably close to. Fine, okay. In this case, the majority is perfectly right. The first letter of the name makes no difference whatsoever. It's 0.001 kind of percent kind of difference, and seems to have no bearing changes from year on year. Similarly, we went on to astrology to debunk the same myth. So, how many people think that the sun sign makes a difference? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, about the same number. How many people think that the sun sign does not make a difference? You're all wrong. So what's weird is that the month of birth actually seems to have a huge impact. On average, for example, in 2011, June borns scored the lowest. September borns scored the highest. And the difference between these is as large as 120 marks out of 1200, enough to get the topper down to the 33rd percentile, a 10 percentage point difference, which only, there's only one other thing that has a larger impact, and that is whether the student is SC/ST or not, which has a 16% impact. Other than that, nothing has this kind of an impact. So we redid this. What about in 2009? Same pattern. 2010, same pattern. Similarly, from every year from 2005 to 2013, same pattern. Broke it up by district, same pattern. By gender, same pattern. By subject, same pattern. Class 10 versus class 12, same pattern. Took it to Andhra Pradesh, same pattern. Took it to Karnataka, same pattern. Took it to ICSE, same pattern. CBSE. It's like this law of nature. Right? Well, see, one of the things about the question why is that data may not necessarily answer it. You do need domain expertise at that point. You do need to get a better understanding, and I know nothing about education. So what I'm going to tell you is what has been told to me, and certainly seems plausible. The root of the explanation comes from Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers, which talks about the Canadian junior hockey team having players born only in the months of January, February, and March. Right? There's no selection bias. It just so happens that there is a national training at age 8. Anyone can join. And 6 years later, from that training, the best players are selected for the junior hockey team for the country. The only cutoff is that you have to be 8 years old. So students or children who are born on 2nd January, for example, who are almost 8 years old as of 1st January, come for the training, and they are told, no, you are 7 years, 364 days old, and therefore you cannot join, come back next year. At which point they are 8 years, 364 days old, practically the oldest in the batch, much more better built physically, more emotionally mature, play a little better, the coach pats them on the back, they tend to improve their performance to the point that 6 years later, they are the oldest players in the batch, are the best players in the batch. The same also holds for the German soccer team, which has players almost exclusively born in the months of January, February, and March. Schools in Tamil Nadu open in July. Okay. So, and you need to be 6 years old as of class 1. So which means that if you're June born and schools open in July, you just make it. July bonds could go either way. August bonds typically miss the cutoff, so do September bonds. Which means that what we are looking at here is not a correlation between sun sign and performance. It's more age and performance. And to be frank, I've been misleading you, right? We sort of half expected that this be the case, but what we did not expect was this be as strong a case as it is. Question is, does it improve over time? Meaning you would think that you'd get all of these bright students. Yes, there is a difference in age, but over time it should get bridged. I mean, that's what the education system is all about, right? It doesn't. It worsens. See, in class 6, for example, the difference is only 5 percentage points. It grows to 10 percentage points by the time you get to class 12. So if anything, over time the education system is only widening the gap. But anyway, since birthdays were so interesting, we said, look, let's just see on average when are people born. Are people typically born in the month of January? I mean, this is like uniformly distributed, randomly distributed, just when would births occur? So we started with US data, which was slightly more readily available. This is the pattern of births in the US between 1975 to 1990, every single birth. The intensity of the cell is the number of, the more intense the cell, the more births there are, and you'll find that most births are happening in the months of July, August, September, particularly September. But this is a known phenomenon. Most conceptions happen during the winter holiday seasons, and 9 months later is when the kids are born. So that's known. But what is weird is that there are very few children born during the Christmas holiday seasons, during the Thanksgiving holidays, during the New Year holidays, during their Independence Day holidays. I mean, this half reads like a holiday calendar, not a birth calendar. Perhaps doctors and hospitals are in short supply at that time, they're taking vacations. There are enough C-sections to be able to move births around, and even otherwise there is a certain amount of control over the birth. So maybe that's happening, but let's not blame just the doctors and hospitals. Incidentally, there are fewer births on Sundays as well. Right? Let's not blame just the doctors and hospitals, because if you notice this, there is a slight vertical thin stripe on the 13th, lesser births on the 13th of any month. Superstition. Parents don't necessarily want their kids to be born on the 13th of a month. They don't want their kids to be born on April 1st, which is Fool's Day. Okay. But February 14th, Valentine's Day, that's a good day for a kid to be born on. St. Patrick's Day, that's a good day for a kid to be born on. So if the US can be this superstitious, what's India going to be like? Okay. So that's the pattern of births in India. Yeah. Nobody's born in August. August, September is this lean season. So an editor that I showed this to was entirely convinced that this is due to the month of Vishaka, and he gave me a full-fledged theory on how astrology is really working out. But I think the explanation here is a lot simpler. It's the same explanation as I gave you a couple of slides ago, which is that this is school admission data. Okay, 2 crore students. Now think about it. If your child is born